Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths, is a new movie out now on Netflix, written and directed by Alejandro Iñárritu, a director that's done some amazing films that visually, I think he pushes the limits of, not limits, but he definitely pushes the art form of film when he does a movie. Recent or popular films from him are The Revenant, obviously, great movie. I think the movie that got Leonardo DiCaprio his Oscar finally. A great movie that's filmed in like seemingly one take. Beautiful film. Also movies like Birdman or Babel or even Amaros Perros, I believe was his first film. So a great director, always willing to try new things when telling a story. And this movie is no different. I could see how this movie could be polarizing. I would understand why people may not like this movie. I could also see why people may consider this film a masterpiece. When The Revenant came out, it blew my mind. It blew my mind. I thought, in my opinion, that's a movie that I think people will look back on and have even more esteem for it. I think it was fairly well reviewed. But again, I think the same issues possibly that The Revenant had, criticisms that movie had, or at least things that didn't really allow people to enjoy it as much as maybe they could have, maybe applied to this movie in a little bit of a way. But this one, as I was watching this movie, which is not a short movie, it is over 2 hours long. The runtime on this is 2 hours and 40 minutes, so not a short movie. However, this year I've watched and reviewed a bunch of Indian films, and a lot of Indian films, the runtime is easily over 2 hours, sometimes over 3. So I've kind of gotten used to watching longer movies. I think runtimes in general for movies has been there's been a trend of doing over 2 hour long movies, which I would say in a lot of cases doesn't necessarily work. In this movie, I would say it works, but it is a movie that is was very hard for me to really enjoy because of how confusing it is until the end. There's a moment at the end, towards the end of this film, that completely recontextualizes everything that you've seen, right? So you're over 2 hours into this movie, kind of confused, not knowing what's going on. Very dreamlike, very surreal, interesting, unique storytelling, visually amazing, a lot of wide-angle shots, a lot of long takes, as he does in a lot of his movies. So much of the beginning, or the majority of this movie, feels like style over substance, right? There's definitely things, a lot of metaphor, a lot of visual metaphor. I mean, it is very surreal, and dreamlike, and just as dreams tend to require some interpretation when finding the meanings of the dreams. And I think not only the way this is told and how that relates and feels so much like dreams, like actual literal dreams people would have as they're sleeping, but also the themes of this movie are very much about dreams, following your dreams and that, but also dealing with a lot of other things. But I think because it's so dreamlike and so confusing and kind of hard to understand what you're even watching, because it's almost like this movie is a pathological liar. Like, every scene you see is not a truth. Like, as the title would say, it's the false chronicles of a handful of truths. So there's like clearly truth buried beneath this facade of dream and wonder and surrealism that makes so much more sense at the end of this film. It's a thing that happens at the end, which I'm not going to spoil it. Maybe when I get to that point, I'll spoil. I'm definitely going to talk about it later, but I'm not going to spoil it yet. But there is definitely that moment I feel justifies, in my opinion, the very disjointed and confusing movie that preceded that event, but at the same time makes complete sense that we are given this story in the style we are. The story is told in a specific way, despite how confusing and disjointed, quote unquote, it may feel. How dreams can feel, how random events can happen that feel so real, but also aren't depictions of reality, but at the same time referencing real things potentially, or at least communicating real ideas or worries or concerns that the person dreaming may have, regrets. So once you understand what's happening, I fell in love with this movie, which I would say, because of the way it's told and because of, I don't know if I would call it a twist ending, but it is definitely an end that justifies and reframes and gives context to the movie that you had just experienced. I think this rewards repeat viewing. And I surprisingly, like, while watching this, I'm like, this is like amazing. This is like one of the most artistic films, right? Especially like surreal. Like that surreal nature. In some ways, it visually, it's like moments from Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. How they're very surreal moments when Jim Carrey's character is lost in his mind as these memories are being erased, trying to hide from the technology that's trying to erase his memories. How almost dreamlike those moments are. So if you were to take that type of an idea and an aesthetic, storytelling aesthetic, and you were to apply that to a 2.5 hour long movie, 2 40-minute long movie, it would be a bit much on its face, despite the fact how absolutely gorgeous. I mean, even the fact that you're not necessarily you're just like, the struggle to follow along with the plot of this movie it's almost intentionally not supposed to be followed. Like, you're supposed to pick up on the themes of each aspect of this movie, and then all of those themes and all of the things that you've experienced through watching this movie, how they get rewarded with the explanation. I think that is an interesting thing to do, but you almost have to just experience this movie. So much of it is very much like just like you're experiencing a dream, really. Which, the way this movie starts is how, like, it's literally like so much of, like, there are so many aspects of this movie that are literally moments from dreams I've had, right? You have dreams that are like so absolutely real, they feel crazy. But the way this opens, and I think it's in the trailer as well, is you see this person, you don't see them, it's like a first person view, walking through the desert with the sun behind him. So you see the long shadow. It's like during sunrise, and you see the long shadow in front of this person. And they start to run, pick up speed, and then they jump and seemingly fly. And there's so many dreams that I've had where the act of flying, right? Tons of flying dreams. I've had some that are different than others. Like, I've had some where you have to, like, flap your arms, like, ridiculous, right? Dreams can be ridiculous. And there's moments of this that are very ridiculous. Very ridiculous. And, like, there's definitely a layer of comedy throughout this movie because of the ridiculous nature of it. But the dream that this starts, or how this movie starts, is like, picking up speed and jumping, and then seemingly like floating through the air, like almost like super jumps instead of flying. And it's interesting how accurately Iñárritu in my opinion, is able to capture and realize that type of a dream sequence, but also so many other types of dream sequences, like when you're like chasing or running away from something in a dream and you go through doors and each doorway takes you into a place that's completely different. The place you live is like has aspects that are similar to the real version, but there's always little changes involved. Like, I love it. I love that. Despite how confusing it is, despite like really feeling lost, and it's all in Spanish. So like reading the subtitles can take away from just experiencing the visual of this. So that's another reason why I think I'd like to watch this movie again, just so I can appreciate the visuals even more, because much of it, and I'm not a fast reader, so much of it I'm like just staring at the lower third of the screen and not really. And I watch it on my TV. So this is on Netflix movie. But I definitely would have loved to watch this in like an IMAX screen or in a theater in general. I think this is a movie that would definitely reward not only repeat viewings but also large screen. And it's just visually amazing. Just like it is a visual journey. You are like going through this surreal, unhinged, dreamlike state for so much of this movie. And the themes that it discusses, I really appreciate. I mean, our main character is somebody who comes from journalism, but is trying to express himself more artistically, doing documentaries. He's supposed to be given an award for his documentary filmmaking that he's done. But he's also somebody, like many artists, suffer from imposter syndrome is one of the main themes. There's a great line that his wife tells him that he's becoming the thing he thinks other people think of him, right? His assumption of how the people around him perceive him, he is becoming that, which is not like he thinks people perceive him as some like stuck up, like pretentious artist type, which he is not. He is massively insecure, and the way he's acting that makes them feel that way, as far as like flaking on things, not showing up to things, like losing connection with people, in so much of that is in reaction to his insecurities, but he feels that people around him are taking it as he's like above them or looking down on them, which I think I think that kind of theme is very interesting, something I definitely relate to. There's also this theme, this moment where he's speaking to his dad. It's like this crazy scene. He's in a bathroom, and he sees his dad, who's no longer alive, but he sees his dad. Everything's crazy in this movie, right? Dream. Just know watching this movie, you're going to be in somebody's dream, or like it's told as a dream. And expect what you would expect from a dream. And he's in this bathroom. He sees his dad, and they're like talking. And then all of a sudden, he's a boy, but with his adult head on him, right? And one of the things his dad says in reference to success is just like, swirl success around in your mouth and taste it, but don't don't consume success, because then it'll poison you. Right, which I think that's definitely something that a lot of people fall victim to, where they gain success and they consume it too much. Like instead of just allowing it to be something that they taste and then let go of and detach from, in order to not become what he assumes other people think of him. As not to become that pretentious artist, that person that looks down on people because you've gained some success, that success changes you. I enjoyed that as well. Let's take a little break from the show to promote gift certificates. If you want to purchase artwork for somebody, you have an art lover in your life, and you think they would like my art, but you don't know what painting to get them. I have over 2,000 original pieces of art for sale in my store, along with shirts and prints and other things. So I can understand that being a bit daunting if you're trying to buy something for somebody else. Give them the gift certificate, and then they can go to my website, inspireddisorder.com, and they can buy whatever paintings they want. They can buy whatever prints they want. They can buy t-shirts. They can buy hats. They can buy all the different merch, gift certificates, which are available currently at inspireddisorder.com. And now let's get back to the show. Very interesting. And then he's also dealing with identity crisis. He's, from Mexico, but he's garnered all this success in America, and he's getting an award from the Society of American Journalists, very prestigious award. And he's like very, very much struggles. Somebody that, lives in America, considers America his home, but he's from Mexico, and he's like struggling with his identity. Big aspect of it. Also something, that comes up within his family. He has 2 younger kids. You're also seeing him struggle with the pain and trauma of losing a child. Very, shortly after the child was born, so a very young baby. And that is whenever that aspect comes into this movie, because these themes and these things kind of float in and out as you're going through this journey, right? It's like nothing is just sectioned off. It's like, now he's, just dealing with the loss of this child, and now he's dealing with, like, it's just something that kind of flows freely. Everything flows in a way in this movie that can at times feel jarring, maybe, or like definitely feels disjointed, because you don't know where you're at. You don't know what's real. You don't know what's true. Like, this movie is constantly lying to you. Like, it's like this movie is like a pathological liar, right? And as an audience member, you're constantly having to filter everything you're seeing through a similar filter you would if you know somebody who's a pathological liar. Everything that person tells you, you have to put through a filter of, like, what aspect of that is true, what's being embellished, what is not true, what is completely not true, how is the reality of the situation being changed and altered by the person who's saying the thing. And in so many ways, this movie is that type of you're using that same type of a filter while watching this movie, right? Because everything you're seeing is like an expression, a metaphor, something that's related to or talking about indirectly, talking about something that is bothering or just internally part of this person that makes up this person's, like, desires, worries, fears, concerns. Which is super interesting to see a character's identity and flaws be expressed in a dreamlike manner. Gorgeous. Brilliant, I would say. And, each scene is insane. The baby scenes, like I said, every time this baby shows up, it is probably like the craziest. It is like the most detached from reality, right? The first scene okay. So I'm going to talk about specific moments that happen that are just interesting, beautiful, whatever. So I'm going to be spoiling certain moments. So spoiler warning for that, right? So there's this baby, right? And when you first see it, it's like one of the first scenes after the flying scene, which I enjoyed that. It definitely sets up, like, it definitely communicates what to expect. Like, it is one of that flying scene is one of, like, the most, in my opinion, I don't know how common it is for everybody else, but for me, it's like, oh, this is like straight out of so many dreams that I've had. And when you think you're, like, awake, when you think and you're watching grounded reality happening, you realize after a while you realize, oh, this is still dream stuff. We're still like in this dream kind of narrative of this film. And you see that with this baby. It's like this woman's giving birth, newborn, right? Clearly a CG baby, but I would say well done CG baby. And there's this moment where the doctor tells him or tells the wife, it's like, oh, the baby doesn't want to stay out here. Baby wants to go back inside. And they're like, what? Why? And it's like, oh, it's too fucked up out here. And it's like that kind of also, like you're seeing the visuals, the storytelling, dream like. And then there's this crazy. And then they shove the baby back inside. And it's like, and then they walk out and there's an umbilical cord, like still stringing this woman to the hospital, the room that she was in, delivery room. And they end up have to cut this. And it's like, it's like, it shows you, it's like, okay, this is the extremes that we're going to show you of this movie, right? It's going to be this peaceful, interesting flying moment. And then on the complete other side of the spectrum is a newborn baby getting shoved back inside of a woman, right? And this baby comes back at crazy every time this baby shows up. It is like the most novel visual thing I've seen in a movie. That is, in so many other movies, like you could see this in a Farrelly Brothers movie and it would be almost that same level of comedy that it I would say evokes in this movie. But in so many ways, this movie is like a work of art, I would say, that doesn't mind getting into visual comedy in that way. And it's dark comedy because it's like the whole meaning behind that the dream analysis of what that baby represents and why it's showing up in those times is so tragic and like heartbreaking when you find out what is the deal with the baby. You know, what is like so much of this movie you're piecing together what the handful of truths are, right? Because there are a handful of truths, right? There's this trauma that happened with this baby, right? Involving this baby. There is insecurities this guy has as an artist, as somebody who doesn't feel like he deserves, like he's constantly thirsts and desires recognition, but every time he gets recognition, it's like he rejects it because of this imposter syndrome that he has, which is 100% something I deal with, and it is a problem. Just as it is for him, it is a problem. It is not something like definitely people on the, and I for 100% have the same kind of insecurities that this guy does, where it's like I feel like maybe the fact that when I do garner praise or success, the very few times I do, I don't feel it's necessarily earned. And I think the way that I react to it is interpreted as like in a way that's not intended. Like my reaction is different from I think how people intend it. But at the same time, like his wife tells to him, I might be turning into the thing that I think other people assume I am, right? Which is just crazy. There's also a lot of moments where he's communicating with people without like actually moving his mouth and talking, and these characters bring it up. Like he does it to his wife in a scene, he does it to his mom in a scene, and I think in a lot of ways that's like also part of insecurities, part of somebody that's in their head a lot, is that they tend to not communicate things. They sometimes communicate a lot more without saying things, right? People that know you can kind of tell what you're thinking based on just your overall appearance. And I think those scenes kind of relate to that, being able to communicate without saying anything. But the way it's portrayed in this is like telepathy, because dream, So I enjoy that as well. So you're constantly asking imagination versus truth, right? And the title explains handful of truths, right? And it's like it's the false chronicles, because the dream interpretation of these things that this guy is wrestling with. And visually, like it's beautiful, super wide angle, gorgeous scenes, hilarious, dark, like painful, heart-wrenching, warm, loving. It touches on all of the different emotions. And like, I don't know, man. And it's like a movie that while watching it, I was like, I don't think I like this movie. And then by the end, I think it's like, okay, maybe this might be my favorite Inarritu movie. I don't know. I wonder how many movies he's done. Let me check that real quick. Which I probably shouldn't be doing mid show, right? Because let's see, producer, produced a bunch of stuff, writer. Why is IMDb all weird right now? Director. Bardo. Music video short. The Revenant. Birdman. Beautiful? I don't know if that's a full length. Babel. 21 grams. Amoros Perros. So maybe as long as there's 5, maybe I'll do a top 5 of Inarritu, which I released top 5 episodes on Sunday. So maybe I'll do that coming up, because I would love to watch all of his movies in succession. And the one thing I love about doing top 5 is visiting films by a director or in a franchise, and mostly by a director, and getting the vibe, understanding how this director likes to communicate his stories, tell his stories or her stories. And when you get in their vibe and you watch and you see, it is so much more beneficial, especially appreciating the work they do, when you're not, when it's not in the mix of like all these other different forms of storytelling and styles of storytelling, right? So I would love to and see where this actually shows up. Because I would say maybe The Revenant might be my favorite of his if I had to just based on memory. But I would say this could be even more so than The Revenant. The Revenant, more traditional story structure, obviously. But knowing where this is going and watching it again and being able to appreciate the visuals a lot more, because I don't necessarily have to, pay as much attention to the subtitles. Gorgeous. And like so many of the themes I relate to, the dreamlike nature of it, I love, right? Just, I don't think I've seen, there's definitely movies that do similar things, but not to this extent, not in this way, where it's like just one of the most confident films to try something so original, I would say, and to tell like a story in this style that I think would put a lot of people off, right? And I don't know if the ending would be as impactful to other people as it was for me. Right, if you're watching this movie and these themes that you're seeing that this guy is struggling with throughout this movie, if they don't necessarily hit with you, then I think once you understand the entire reasoning for everything, it may not be worth it. But I don't know, man. For me, it was insanely good, and like so surprising. Let's take a little break from the show to promote the benefits of Inspired Disorder Plus. So you go inspireddisorder.com/plus. Sign up, $5 a month. You get to binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free. You get to watch all of the live painting videos I do. You get a special members-only discount and deals for all of the artwork and merch that I sell. You also get the complete podcast back catalog of every podcast I've ever produced, hundreds of episodes, countless different podcasts. You also get access to my personal blog. A new blog comes out every week. In addition to that, you get my creative writing that I'm releasing. You also get access to Asking Me Anything. 14 years of experience podcasting. I've been creating art my entire life. I've been using Photoshop since middle school, and you can contact me to ask me questions about that or anything else. So those are the benefits for signing up for Inspired Disorder Plus. And now let's get back to the show. And like watching this movie, like there's so many times where I'll be watching a movie that I would consider bad, and I wouldn't consider this one bad. I just would have, while watching this, considered a huge swing that didn't hit until that ending. And there's so many movies where I'm watching it and I'm not liking the experience watching the movie, and I'm hopeful that there will be something at the end that makes it all work, which sometimes does happen. And sometimes it's not enough. Like there's movies that clearly come together at the end, but the experience getting there was not worth it. I would say the experience getting to the explanation is just amazing. It's just like you're floating through these different dreams throughout these things, and just so interesting visual things that are happening that, like, one of the things another reason why I think this would probably reward repeat viewing is there's so many interesting things that happen that I don't know how they fit. I don't know what he's trying to say necessarily, right? Like, and same thing with dreams. There's crazy things that happen in dreams, and a lot of the times you can kind of understand and kind of draw meaning from certain things of a dream, but not everything in a dream, right? There'll be random things that'll happen in a dream that just don't make any sense. I have no idea why that was in my dream. And while watching this, there's definitely moments, but I feel like they are intentional in this movie. I don't feel like they're just random things to be random. I think they all make sense. And because of the nature of the storytelling, that dreamlike nature and style, I think it's easy to miss all of the different connective tissue. And I think a lot of it is probably due to one of the themes being his Mexican identity. There's things that are clearly referenced to Mexican history and different things that I would place at the fault of my ignorance more than not following what's going on. So I don't know. I really absolutely love this movie. It's insanely good. I'm going to be doing my top 5 movies of the year, and I don't know where this will end up. I don't think it'll be number 1, just because there's other amazing films that I've seen that I also enjoyed watching all the way through. Like, they didn't require me to find understanding at the end of the movie. Despite how there's definitely complex movies that I've seen, like Everything Everywhere All at Once, in many ways can be similar to this, although the explanation for why things are so weird in that movie are explained as you're on the ride, where this one, you have to just understand. I didn't know, but you will only understand, like, the answer key will show up at the end of this movie that will allow you to draw way more understanding from the entire film you had just seen, versus something like Everything Everywhere All at Once, where you're on this ride and you kind of know, despite how crazy that one is. But just beautiful. It's like, I don't know, man, some of the most creative movies this year, like so immensely artistic and creative, whether it's Bardo, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Athena, like just these movies that are taking huge swings and I think really succeeding and showing what these artists can really do with storytelling and the medium of movies. And I appreciate that a lot. Let's see if there's anything I missed. Living the Dream, artistic relevance. I guess I could talk about the end. So spoiler, right? I want to talk about the moment where everything gets put together, right? That answer key, when the reveal happens that lets everything make sense. So I would highly recommend not listening to any more. Come back after you've watched this movie, right? Because I mean, even knowing, I wouldn't have liked knowing going in. I like the confusion of just taking part in this dream as everything's happening, and just like, I think the confusion is a feature, not a bug. So spoilers for what I'm about to talk about, because it's a twist, it is a defining moment, and it is at the end of this movie. So you've been warned. The way, so you've seen all these crazy scenes, right? One of them, he's like on a metro and he's got these like a plastic bag of fish, water and fish. Not like fish, but they're like newts or something, right? Underwater lizards. I don't know what the actual name of the animal is. And he's on a metro, and all of a sudden the bag spills, but all of a sudden the bottom of the train is full of water and there's these newts everywhere, and he's like scrambling through this water on the metro, and then all of a sudden he's at home and it's a top-down view of like almost like a dollhouse version of the house as he's looking for these newts. But he's taking the metro in LA because he had a conversation with his daughter that about, like he lives kind of a privileged life. They have money. He's never taken public transportation, and she's like kind of roasting him about it. So he decides to take the train in LA and goes to get these newts, which his son also told him a story about how he had these things and they died when he was a kid, and he thought he didn't know what happened, and ended up putting him, like, he was ashamed. He put him in a box under his bed. They started to smell, so he put him in the freezer. And then one night his mom made dinner and she made fish, and throughout the whole meal he was worried that she had accidentally cooked his dead fish, right? So he tells his dad this story, which is, also showing the relationship he has with his kids. So he goes to go take the train, two birds, one stone. I'm going to take the train and go get my son some fish, and I'll be able to tell my daughter I finally took this train. While he's on the train, has like a stroke or an aneurysm, drops these fish, and you're seeing this scene again from the beginning of the movie, and you see what happens, and then you see that now he's in a hospital, and everything makes sense. From the news that's on the TV, which was in part of his brain while he was, like, he had this entire movie has been his dreams while he's in a coma from having a stroke or whatever it was. An embolism. I don't know exactly what happened to him, but he's in a coma. So you've been experiencing him. You have been in his dreams, but not while he's in a coma. And you're seeing all of the things that he has concerns about and worries about through the filter of a dream. And that is why there are truths to what you've been watching, but they've been expressed in these quote unquote false chronicles, right? These metaphorical, stylized dreams that he's been having, which recontextualizes everything. And like when I saw that, I was like, oh, so this is what it is. Because like you don't know. It's like, okay, maybe he's sleeping. And you think there's like these scenes come up and it's like, oh no, he's awake. So now we're like, because it seems like he's waking up from these dreams, but you realize, no, all of the times throughout this movie, I would think that, oh, this is reality. This is, and because he kind of references the dream as it was a dream, but he's still in the dream. So amazing when you see that. And just it just like it blew my mind. It's perfect, completely makes sense. Oh, it makes complete, like that's how you would tell a story of somebody grappling with all of these different things while in a dream. And it's such a long dream that it is explained because he's in a coma. Brilliant. Absolutely beautifully confusing, right? Disturbing at times with the baby, but even how that baby, when they let the baby go in the ocean, kind of beautiful and cathartic, right? The family kind of letting go finally of this trauma that happened, which is very heartbreaking. But also discussing and dealing with dreams, not only as the literal form of dreams, but also aspirations and goals you may have artistically, those types of dreams, also your fears, also your regrets, all of these things wrapped into one. I absolutely love this movie. And I know people won't, but I do. So anyway, I would recommend it. I mean, it's a masterpiece, I would say. Insane, a masterpiece. Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths. It is on Netflix. I would watch it. I would recommend you do the same, and let me know what you thought of the movie. I completely understand if people watched it and didn't like it, but I absolutely loved it. So check it out. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.